A wad of spit landed on the side of a woman's face. She froze. One hand went to her cheek, the other dropped to her swollen belly. The man who did it laughed. He swayed on his feet, beer breath thick, and pointed a finger in her face like he owned her. He told her to clean it up. He told her she was nothing. Behind that finger sat a badge, pinned crooked to a uniform shirt. The waitress was 8 months pregnant. Her name was Maria. She had been serving coffee at this diner for 6 years, and in all that time nobody had ever touched her like that. But 3 booths back, a man with gray in his beard set down his fork. He had watched every second. What that quiet man did next emptied the entire diner in under 2 minutes. Stay with me on this one. Let me back up about 20 minutes so you understand exactly what kind of night this was. The place was called Dots. A little chrome and glass diner off the highway, the kind with a counter, 8 booths, and a pie case that hummed all night. Trucks pulled in, ate, and pulled out. Most nights it was quiet after 10. That was why Maria liked the late shift. Slow tips, sure, but slow trouble too. She was 8 months along, her ankles swelled up by midnight, and a quiet diner meant she could sit on the stool behind the register and rest her feet between customers. Her husband worked nights at the lumber yard, 20 minutes away. They'd been saving for the baby. A crib, a car seat, the hospital bill. Every dollar Maria carried in her apron meant something, so she smiled at everybody. She refilled coffee before you asked. She remembered how the regulars took their eggs. That was just who she was. Around 11, a group came in and took the big corner booth. 5 of them, leather vests, road dust, gray in their beards. Bikers. Their motorcycles were lined up out front under the parking lot light. Now, plenty of people see men like that and get nervous. Maria didn't. She'd waited on rough-looking men her whole life, and she'd learned something most people never learn. The ones who looked dangerous were almost always polite. It was the ones in nice clothes you had to watch. These men were polite. They said please. They said thank you, ma'am. The big one at the head of the booth, the one with the gray beard and the calm eyes, ordered coffee and a slice of apple pie and called her sweetheart in a way that wasn't slimy. Just kind. He left a folded bill under his saucer before the food even came. Maria didn't know who he was. She didn't know that the patch on his vest meant he ran every chapter for 300 miles. She just knew he tipped well and kept his voice down. Here's the thing about that man. He noticed everything. He sat with his back to the wall like men who've lived hard always do, and from that booth he could see the whole room. The door, the counter, every face that came and went. He wasn't watching for trouble, but if it walked in, he'd see it first. And at 11:40, trouble walked in. The door banged open hard enough to rattle the bell off its hook. A man stumbled through it. Big guy, thick through the chest, going soft in the middle. Buzz cut. Red face. He had a police uniform on, but the shirt was untucked and the badge hung crooked, and he was so drunk he had to grab the doorframe to stay standing. His name was Officer Dale Briggs. Maria didn't know that yet either. She just knew the smell hit her from 10 feet away. Whiskey and sweat. He'd been drinking for hours, and somewhere in those hours he'd decided the badge on his chest meant the rules didn't apply to him anymore. He dropped onto a counter stool and it groaned under him. He slapped the counter. "Coffee," he said. "Black. And move it." Maria poured it. Set it down gentle. "Long night, officer?" He didn't answer. He just stared at her belly, then at her face with a look she didn't like. A mean look. The look of a man who'd had a bad day and was hunting for somebody smaller than him to put it on. She went back to wiping the counter. The 5 men in the corner booth kept eating. The big one with the gray beard set down his fork, just for a second, and watched the cop. Then he picked it back up. Not yet. Just watching. That was the room. A tired pregnant woman. A drunk man with a badge looking for somebody to hurt. And 5 quiet men in the corner that the drunk man hadn't even noticed walking in. Briggs had no idea what he'd sat down in front of. That was the whole problem. The most dangerous man in 300 miles was eating pie 9 feet behind him, and Officer Dale Briggs was about to do the dumbest thing a man can do. It started with the coffee. Briggs took one sip, slammed the mug down, and said it was cold. It wasn't. Maria had poured it 30 seconds ago, steam still coming off it. But she didn't argue. She never argued. "Let me get you a fresh one," she said, and reached for the pot. "Don't bother," he snapped. "You people can't do anything right. You people." Maria's hand stopped on the pot handle. She didn't know if he meant women or waitresses, or her last name, which was Reyes. She decided not to ask. She just poured the fresh cup and slid it over and stepped back. That should have been the end of it. Some men, you give them a little room and the meanness burns off. But Briggs wasn't burning off. He was winding up. Drunks like him, they need a reaction. And the calmer she stayed, the more it ate at him. Because somewhere in his soaked brain her calm felt like she thought she was better than him. He started in on her. Loud. Where was she from? Did she even have her papers? Did she know how many people he'd put in cuffs that week? He held up his badge between 2 fingers and waved it at her like a card trick. "You see this? This means I'm somebody. You're nobody. You bring me my coffee and you keep your mouth shut." The diner had gone quiet. The cook, an old man named Earl, stuck his head out the kitchen window. The 2 truckers at the far booth stared into their plates and stopped chewing. And in the corner, 5 men had gone very, very still. Maria felt the baby move. 8 months. She put a hand on her belly without thinking about it. And that small gesture, that mother's gesture, was the thing that set him off. "Don't you ignore me," he said. He stood up. The stool tipped over behind him and clattered on the floor. He came around the end of the counter into her space where customers weren't supposed to go. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." "Officer," she said quietly, "I think you've had too much to drink. Let me call you a cab." That was it. That was the spark. The idea that she would manage him. That she, the nobody, the pregnant waitress, would tell him what he needed. His face twisted up, and he spit on her. I want you to picture it the way the men in that booth saw it. A drunk man, twice her size, leaning into the face of a pregnant woman who had done absolutely nothing, and spitting on her. The spit hit her cheek and the corner of her mouth. She flinched back and her hip caught the edge of the counter and the coffee pot fell and shattered on the floor. "Clean it up," Briggs said. "That's all you're good for." Now here's where it could have gone 100 different ways. Maria didn't scream. She didn't cry, not yet. She did the thing that brave, tired people do when something cruel happens and they have a baby to protect. She wiped her face with the back of her wrist, and she bent down, slow and careful around her belly, and she started picking up the broken glass. And that, somehow, was worse to watch than the spit itself. The 5 men in the corner saw a pregnant woman on her knees on a diner floor, picking up glass, because a man with a badge had decided she was nothing. Earl came out of the kitchen. "Hey," he said. "Hey, that's enough. You can't." Briggs spun on him and put a hand on his own holster. Didn't draw, just touched it. A threat. "You want to finish that sentence?" he said. "You want to obstruct an officer? I will close this dump down tonight. Health code. I'll find 10 violations before I finish my coffee." Earl's mouth shut. He looked at Maria on the floor, looked at the cop's hand on the gun, and he backed up into the kitchen. Because what else could he do? The man had a badge. The man had a gun. The man could ruin all of them and probably get a medal for it. Briggs smiled. He'd won. He always won. That badge had gotten him out of 3 DUIs, 2 complaints, and 1 thing in his past that never made it into a report. He'd learned the lesson young. The badge meant no consequences. So he picked his stool up off the floor, sat back down, and reached for his fresh coffee like nothing had happened. "And bring me a slice of that pie," he said over his shoulder. "Apple. No charge, obviously." Maria stood up slowly. She set the glass on a tray. Her hands were shaking. She walked back behind the counter, ran the water, and washed her face at the little sink, her back to the room so nobody would see her cry. The baby kicked again. She put her hand flat on her belly and whispered something nobody could hear. Probably it's okay. Probably we're okay. And for a moment, it seemed like it was over. The truckers went back to eating, heads down. Earl banged a pan in the kitchen. The coffee maker gurgled. Briggs slurped his coffee and scrolled his phone. Content. A man at peace with the world he just bullied into silence. The tension in the room let out like air from a tire. Maria dried her face, fixed her ponytail, and reached for a clean plate to cut the man his free pie, because that was easier than a fight. And a fight was the last thing a woman 8 months pregnant needed at midnight. Nobody was looking at the corner booth. So nobody saw the big man with the gray beard fold his napkin, lay it on the table, and slide out of his seat. He didn't make a sound. He stood up to his full height, and he was tall and broad, and old in the way that oak trees are old. Then he started walking toward the counter. He didn't say anything at first. He just walked over and stood next to Briggs at the counter. Closer than a stranger stands. And he reached past the cop, picked up the little ceramic creamer, and stirred it into a cup of coffee that wasn't there. Slow, calm. The way you test whether a dog is going to bite. Briggs looked up, annoyed. Help you? I think you owe the lady an apology, the man said. His voice was low and even, not angry. That was the thing Maria noticed. He wasn't angry at all. He sounded almost bored, the way a man sounds when he already knows how something ends and is just waiting for everybody else to catch up. Briggs laughed. He actually laughed. He looked the old biker up and down, took in the leather vest, the road grime, the gray beard, and he saw exactly what he wanted to see. An old man who'd ridden in off the highway. Nobody. Another nobody. Sit down, Grandpa, Briggs said. Before you get yourself arrested too. And here's the moment everything changed. Not because the old man got louder, because he got quieter. He leaned down, close to the cop's ear, and he said something the rest of the diner couldn't hear. Just 6 words. Maria saw the cop's face while he said them. She watched Briggs's grin slip, watched the red drain right out of those cheeks, watched a drunk man go pale and sober in the space of a single breath. Because what the old man said was this: look behind you, then count us. Briggs turned around on his stool. For the first time all night, he actually saw the corner booth. He saw 4 men sitting there, not eating anymore, all of them turned toward him, all of them perfectly calm, the way men are calm when they outnumber you and they've done this before. And he saw the vests, and on those vests he saw the patches. And being a cop, even a bad drunk one, he knew exactly what those patches meant. The top rocker, the bottom rocker, the diamond in the middle. He knew the name of the club. He knew the man stirring empty coffee next to him wasn't an old man who'd wandered in off the highway. He was the one whose name went on the reports the cop filed but never closed. He ran every chapter from here to the state line. The kind of man other men whispered about. And Officer Dale Briggs had just spit on a pregnant woman 9 feet in front of him and threatened to shut the place down. The whole nature of the night had just changed. A minute ago this was a story about a bully and a badge. Now it was something else entirely. Because the badge, the thing that had protected Briggs his whole life, the thing that meant no consequences, didn't mean a thing to the 5 men in this room. Out here off the highway at midnight with no backup and no cameras, that badge was just a piece of tin on a crooked shirt. And the math had flipped. The most powerful man in the room wasn't the one with the gun anymore. Briggs reached for his radio. The old man's hand came down on his wrist. Not hard, just firm, just enough. I wouldn't, he said. You call this in, you've got to explain why you're here. Drunk, off duty, spitting on a pregnant girl in front of 9 witnesses. He nodded toward the truckers, toward Earl in the window. And one of them's already filming. Have been since the spit. So go ahead. Make the call. Let's see whose night ends worse. Briggs's eyes went to the far booth. One of the truckers held up a phone, red dot glowing, pointed right at him. He'd been so busy feeling powerful he hadn't noticed. Of course he hadn't. Men like Briggs never think anybody's watching because for years nobody who mattered ever was. His hand came off the radio. If you've made it this far with me, do me one favor. Tap that subscribe button. These stories take real work to put together, and the only way more people find them is if folks like you stick around. That's it. Now let's get back to that diner because the cop just made his second mistake of the night. He decided to fight his way out. Briggs shoved off the stool and squared up. Drunk courage. The badge in him still believing the badge would save him. "You're all under arrest," he slurred. "Threatening an officer. Every one of you. Hands where I can." He went for the gun. 5 men moved at once. But the old one moved first. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened next because the trucker's phone caught all of it, and the video is the only reason anybody believes it. Briggs's hand closed on the grip of his pistol. He never cleared the holster. The old man's hand was already there, flat over the top of the gun, pinning it down into the leather so it couldn't come out. And his other hand took Briggs by the back of the neck, fingers like a vice, and walked him 3 steps backward into the wall by the pie case. Calm. No wind-up. No rage. Just a man doing something he'd clearly done before, the way you'd guide a stumbling drunk away from a ledge. The 4 others were on their feet now, forming a half-circle. Not touching the cop. Just there. A wall of leather, cutting off the room. "Take your hand off the gun," the old man said. Briggs let go. The old man drew the pistol out himself, slow, and dropped the magazine into his palm, and racked the slide so the chambered round flipped out and pinged on the floor. Then he set the empty gun on the counter, out of reach, and let go of the cop's neck. "There," he said. "Now nobody's getting shot tonight, including you. You're welcome." Briggs was breathing hard. The fear and the whiskey and the rage were all fighting in his face. "Do you know what I can do to you?" he said. "Do you have any idea?" "I know exactly what you can do," the old man said. "I've been knowing men like you my whole life. You can write a report that says whatever you want. You can plant something. You can call your buddies and tell them 5 bikers jumped you, and they'll believe you because you've got the badge and we've got the patches, and that's how it always goes." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know what you can do." He picked the empty gun back up and held it out, grip first, to Briggs. The whole room held its breath. Maria's hand was over her mouth. "But not tonight," the old man said. "Because tonight there's a camera. And tonight you didn't pull on 5 road bums nobody would miss. You pulled on me in front of 9 people after you spit on a pregnant woman. So here's how this is going to go." He let Briggs take the empty gun back. A small thing, but it told everyone watching who was really in control. You don't hand a man back his weapon unless you've already decided he's harmless. "You're going to walk over to that young lady," the old man said, "and you're going to apologize. Real one. Not a cop apology. And then you're going to sit down on that stool, and you're going to wait, because somebody's already made a call, and they're going to want to hear this from you directly." "What call?" Briggs said. "Who'd you call?" "Your watch commander," the old man said. "Funny thing, I've got his number. Me and the captain go back. He doesn't love me, but he hates a dirty cop a whole lot more than he hates me, because a dirty cop is the thing that gets his whole department dragged through the mud on the evening news. So when I told him one of his officers was drunk off duty, threatening citizens with a firearm, spitting on a pregnant waitress, and it was all on video, he shrugged. He got real interested real fast. He's sending 2 cars. Sober ones. You could see it land on Briggs. The badge wasn't going to save him this time. The badge was the thing that was going to bury him. Because everything that made him untouchable, the uniform, the gun, the authority, all of it just made the video worse. A regular drunk in a bar fight is a Tuesday. A drunk cop pulling a gun on civilians after assaulting a pregnant woman, on camera, that's a career ending in handcuffs and a headline. "You set me up," Briggs whispered. "No, son," the old man said. and for the first time there was something almost gentle in it, almost sad. You walked in here and did all of this your own self. Every bit of it. I just made sure somebody was watching. That's the only thing I did. I made sure that for once in your life, somebody was watching. Briggs turned to Maria, and the big tough cop, the man who'd waved his badge and threatened to close the place down, started to come apart. His chin shook. Maybe it was the whiskey. Maybe it was the wall of leather behind him and the empty gun in his hand and the red dot of the camera. Or maybe, somewhere down under all of it, there was still a piece of a person who knew what he'd done. "I'm sorry," he said to her. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I had a bad." He stopped himself before he could make it an excuse. "There's no reason. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Maria didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Not forgiveness exactly. Just an acknowledgement. "I heard you." That was all he was going to get, and it was more than he deserved. Headlights swept across the windows. 2 patrol cars pulled into the lot, parking neat beside the row of motorcycles. The cavalry. Just not the kind Briggs had been hoping for. The old man stepped back and let the room breathe. His work was done. He'd never thrown a punch. He'd disarmed a loaded gun, defused a drunk, and brought down a badge, all without raising his voice once. That's the thing about real power. The loud kind, the badge-waving kind, the spitting kind, that's not power. That's just fear in a costume. Real power is quiet, and it doesn't have to prove anything, and by the time you notice it's in the room, it's already too late. The door opened. 2 sober officers walked in, hats off, eyes already moving over the scene. The lead one looked at Briggs against the wall, looked at the empty gun and the spilled coffee and the pregnant woman with red eyes, and his jaw set hard. "Dale," he said, "what in God's name did you do?" They walked Briggs out in his own cuffs. That's the detail people remember from the video, the one that went around the county and then a lot further than the county. The other officers didn't rough him up. They were almost quiet about it. One of them read him his rights on the diner floor while the other collected the gun and bagged it and took down the truckers' names. Briggs didn't fight. The fight had all gone out of him. He just kept his eyes on the floor while they walked him past the row of motorcycles and folded him into the back of a cruiser. A man who'd spent his whole life sure the rules were for other people, finally learning they weren't. He lost the badge. Of course he lost the badge. The video made sure of that. Drunk and disorderly assault, brandishing a firearm, all of it on a phone in high definition with sound. There was no report he could write that beat the footage. The department couldn't protect him even if they'd wanted to, and after the news got hold of it, they very much did not want to. He took a deal. He didn't do long, but he did some, and he never wore a uniform again, and somewhere out there he's a man who has to explain a gap in his work history for the rest of his life. That's the consequence he'd dodged 100 times. It just took one night and one camera and one quiet man in a corner booth to finally collect. But that's not really the part of the story I want to leave you with. After the cruisers pulled out, the diner was quiet again. The truckers paid up and left, shaken, telling each other they'd never seen anything like it. Earl came out of the kitchen and put on a pot of fresh coffee with his hands still trembling. And Maria finally sat down, right there in a booth in the middle of her own shift, and let herself cry. Not the scared kind, the other kind, the kind that comes after, when the danger's gone and your body finally lets you feel it. The old man slid into the booth across from her. He didn't crowd her. He just sat the way you'd sit with somebody at a funeral, present and quiet. After a while, he pushed a napkin across the table. She took it. "You okay?" he asked. "The baby." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Kicking. Mad, I think." A small laugh broke through the tears. "Like the mother." He smiled at that. "Why?" she asked him. "You don't know me. Why'd you do all that?" He was quiet for a moment. He looked out the window at the highway, at the dark, at something a long way off. "My mother waited tables," he finally said. 40 years. Diners just like this one. And there were nights she came home and didn't say anything, and went straight to her room, and I was too young to know why. He turned the empty coffee cup slowly on the table. I know why now. There was always some man who figured a woman bringing him his food was a woman he could treat any way he liked. And there was never anybody in the room to stand up for her. Never once. He looked at Maria. I decided a long time ago that if I was ever in the room, there'd be somebody. That's all. That's the whole reason. I was just in the room. Then he stood up and he reached into his vest, and he set something on the table in front of her. It was a roll of bills folded thick, more than she made in a month of late shifts. The crib money, the car seat money, the hospital money, all of it at once. For the baby, he said. Don't argue. You'll lose. She started to protest anyway, and he held up one hand, gentle, and she stopped. You take care of that little one, he said. And you remember something for me. The loudest man in the room is almost never the most dangerous. And the most dangerous man. He paused at the door and looked back, and there was the ghost of a smile in that gray beard. Sometimes he's just there to make sure the quiet ones get home safe. Then the bell rang over the door, and he was gone. 5 motorcycles started up in the lot, one after another, a low rolling thunder. And then they pulled out onto the highway, and the sound of them faded into the dark and was gone too. Maria sat in the booth a long while, the roll of bills in one hand, the other on her belly, feeling the baby move. The coffee maker hummed. The chrome shone. Outside, the highway carried its trucks through the night the way it always had. She named the baby a few weeks later. A boy. And no, she didn't name him after the old man. She never even learned his real name. But she did teach that boy one thing, over and over, all the way up. The same words a stranger left on a diner table on the worst and strangest night of her life. When you're in the room, be the somebody. Especially when nobody's watching. Because that's where it counts. Not when there's a camera. Not when there's a crowd. But at midnight, in an empty diner off the highway, when a tired woman is on her knees picking up broken glass, and the only thing standing between her and the worst of the world is whether one quiet person decides to set down their fork and stand up. That's the whole story. That's the whole thing. And I hope, if you're ever in that room, you already know which one you'll be.